I think we should start, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the Artistic Research Week 2018. We're going to start with a format which we tried out for the first time last year, and obviously it was the first time last year because it was the first time we arranged the Research Week. But it was a format that we found quite intriguing and interesting, and that is basically two colleagues having a conversation, a dialogue, not a curator interviewing an artist or a theorist interviewing an artist, but basically a conversation between two colleagues. So we're going to have two dialogues before we have a coffee break. First ones out are Hjort Guttu in dialogue with Rike Frank. Please sit after they're done so that we can go directly into the next dialogue. They're going to go on for like 20 minutes, and we're going to make sure that there will be time for some questions before their session is over. So, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Jörn. Thank you, the entire CUF Week team, for organizing this and for giving us the opportunity to talk about something which we have been working on together for the last year. In a certain sense, we are fulfilling the cliché that it will be a dialogue, but it will also be a dialogue between, of course, between two colleagues, but also between a curator and an artist. So Hjort Guttu and I, we are working on a publication. It's titled Hjort Guttu, Writings, Conversations, Scripts. It's funded very generously by the CUF funding system, and it's going to come out in March. The occasion was or is an exhibition that we also have been working on, an exhibition that opened last Friday in Tromsø. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, good. An exhibition that opened last Friday titled Hjort Guttu Films at the Tromsø Kunstforening. And I would like to take this opportunity also to thank Leiv Magne Tangen, who invited Anna and myself to collaborate and gave us the opportunity also to work on the show as well as on the publication. The exhibition is on view on both floors at Tromsø Kunstforening, and we will talk you through the exhibition in a second. It consists of about 5 film installations produced between 2012 and 2016, brought in an arrangement with a selection of text and text works. In addition, one further installation is installed next door at the student gallery called Snark at the Academy in Tromsø. Since the beginning of our collaboration, one core idea of the show was actually to bring together Anne's films and writings. Some of you might be familiar with her writings that range from short poetic descriptions and observations, as well as statements, to scripts for films or long essays based on intensive research processes. They are, at least in my opinion, but we also will give you an example in a second, they are deeply rooted in her interest in society as well as education. And let me comment on this, because it became very clear also over the course of working on the exhibition and looking at having the opportunity to look at the works again and again, where there are, in many of her works, children appearing in her works, in her text works as well as in her film installations. And often in the writings on her work, people have emphasized some kind of a pedagogical focus in her work. However, seeing the work installed at the exhibition in Tromsø, I really enjoyed the idea that this is actually addressing a future generation. And I saw kids and children going into the exhibition and seeing their fellows in the works and enjoying seeing other children in the works. So as I said, they are rooted in this interest, and the way we seek to exist and coexist, the passion to follow an idea as much as the struggles we encounter as individuals in society at large. They also carry a very particular tonality that is rich and detailed in its descriptive mode, yet accessible in their complexity. And we will start now by talking you through the exhibition. We will start on the first floor. It was a very conscious decision to start with untitled City at Night. Some kind of a choreographed opening of the exhibition to create a dialogue with the city, because as you're going to see, as you see here, Tromsø Kunstforening is kind of, you know, on a little hill within the city, or the city itself is on a little hill. And therefore you have this wonderful, beautiful view towards the landscape, but also towards the city. And now, in particular, around this time of the year, that is characterized by darkness, as well as the return of the sunlight, we emphasize this kind of dialogue between light and darkness. Maybe we start with Untitled.
Yeah, I can explain that work a little bit, and I also thought I could actually show an excerpt from this film. It's made in 2013. In Norwegian it's called Uten titel, Byen om natta. And it consists only of an interview with an artist who is anonymous, so we don't really know who she is. And she talks about one work that she has worked on for the last 20 years, which is a huge archive of drawings. And these drawings are made through walks, or she describes, I don't remember exactly what this excerpt contains, but she describes that she walks around in the city and she experiences situations, and then she goes home and she draws these situations. And we wanted to start with that work, I think, because it's on the first, this Tromsø Kunstforening consists of 2 floors, and the first floor is, or the ground floor is somehow for us a mental image of also the kind of the basement, or the underworld, the dark. And I think we thought about the second floor more as in the light. And this is a film which is about the night and about the city. As you can see, we also created this window, this kind of foil, like neutral
yeah, we
density.
had to block out, because the light is coming back, we had to block out the light during certain hours.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just show this excerpt from this film. Kan du fortelle litt mer konkret hva du har tenkt, for eksempel når du har laget dette da? Hva viser det?
Altså først så har jeg gått en runde i byen om natta. Det kunne ta fra 1 til 3 timer. Og så har jeg, når jeg har gått, så har jeg sett nå en situasjon. Det trenger ikke være så dramatisk, men jeg har prøvd å velge situasjoner som har en slags dybde. Det her et ganske tidlig arbeid, 94. Jeg har jo så mange tusen sånne totalt, det sa jeg kanskje til deg. Dette partituret, jeg må nesten lese på baksiden. Det en dame som hadde lagt seg ned i nedgangen til Carl Berner T-banestasjon. Og så kom det noen vektere og dro henne med seg ut. Jeg sto litt opp i veien der. Og så snakket jeg med henne etterpå, og hun sa at hun ikke orket å ta inn på hospits. Så hun gul. Og vekterne, det disse sorte firkantene som beveger seg rundt henne. I mange av de første partiturene politi og vektere mørkeblå, svarte. Treblåsere, mens narkomane og andre nedkjørte, slitne folk har lyse farger, gult og hvitt. Jeg tenkte at de var strykere, da. Så jeg prøvde å lage et system av det. Men etter en stund ga jeg opp det. Altså, hvorfor skulle folk plasseres sammen i båser? Det jo ikke noe særlig utfordrende. Så det endret seg. I noen tilfeller så har jeg altså fått hjelp til å skrive ut musikken, men jeg har aldri hørt den spilt.
Det også sånn at hele dette arkivet handler om denne konflikten mellom høy og lav, eller sterk og svak?
Nei, som jeg sa, så tenker jeg på det som en kartlegging av byen om natta. Det all slags aktivitet om natta, det bare en annen type aktivitet. Det mye folk på jobb. Veiarbeidere og folk som jobber skift og...
Ja.
So this continues then on the second floor. Do we have the image here? Yeah. With the second installation called Four Studies of Oslo and New York. You want to say something about the film?
Yes, again? I can say something about that as well.
I mean, connection to the text.
The exhibition consists of older works, or like works that have already been shown and produced for other occasions. And I think the interesting thing was not really to show these works again, but to try to make this connection between my writings and the various film works. And also to try to see if there are connections to the place. And for example, in Tromsø, actually the exact same thing is happening with the waterfront, that they actually build it out. And this film, which I screen here, is about the development of the waterfront in Oslo, in Bjørvika. And it's about how light is distributed to the rich and darkness is distributed to the poor, which we experienced when we were in Tromsø, that it's exactly the same thing. Of course, this is very general, happening everywhere, but they were frustrated and they felt that they were losing a public area in the harbor that has been there forever and which is now privatized and changed. So it was a nice, actually very interesting to have this work and to see Tromsø from above. And we placed this film then with text which is from a completely different context, I think, but which somehow could maybe work together. And Rike Frank will now read this text.
Who is she?
And I also actually took out, but is it possible to read anything here? No, no. Okay, then you will have to hear it in English only.
I start by a quote. I start with a quote by Sven Olav Wallenstein from 2001. Our history signs seem to have a negative and defensive character. They would talk about the transitory and the random rather than stable arrangements, about our cultural and symbolic systems, fitness and dissolution rather than their monumental infinity. And I continue with Anna's text. There's a talk of completely restoring Arne Linus' monumental wall painting Garden of Eden. The painting covers two opposing walls in the Hammersborg tunnel, which runs under the government quarters in Oslo. The work has been retouched from time to time, once by the artist himself, who repainted parts of it in 1975 and added the laconic inscription Garden of Eden by Arne Linus, 1972. Preservation and Maintenance, Oslo City Council's art collection. Following debates in the media about the decay of art belonging to Oslo City Council, restoration is planned for 2010. The surface of Garden of Eden is currently discolored, with the paint and the primer peeling off in flakes. The painting is lit partly by yellow lamps, partly by white fluorescent tubes, and partly by daylight from above and from the tunnel entrances, which means that the color temperature changes as you pass through. Road dust and spray from thousands upon thousands of cars have blurring the once so clear boundaries between black and white, so that the whole surface is rendered in various shades of gray and brown. In some places you can hardly see Linus' naive depictions of animals, plants and humans. The bottom 2 meters are also full of tagging, where a graffiti historian would be able to identify pieces, I love this one, stencils and slogans from the 80s, 90s and 2000s. I was a child in the 70s and have a strong relationship with this work of art. The tunnel was Oslo's main thoroughfare, and since we lived at St. St. Haugen, we drove past this gigantic painting several times a week. Many demonstrations also marched through the tunnel from Youngstorget, and it was apparently a dilemma whether to chant or not, as the acoustics were great underground, but nobody but the protesters could hear them. I hope some of you remember this scene. I thus either viewed the great black figures in the yellow light from my pram or through the car window, and it is precisely because I know the painting so well that it gives me a sort of pleasure to register the passage of time by the growing patches of flake paint. Today, Garden of Eden has been transformed into a latter-day work of land art akin to Robert Smithson's Spiral Jetty or Ingvar Carlsson Scarecrows. The difference is that the scarecrows perished as a result of the forces of nature on a wind-swept islet off the Norwegian coast. While Garden of Eden is slowly but surely being worn down by traffic and concrete erosion, Garden of Eden shows us that the city and the lives we live are brutal, transient, and as inescapable as the winter storms on the Lister coast. The artist himself wants the painting to be restored. Given its current condition, this would involve not just painting over, but sanding down, polishing and priming the whole wall before painting onto it again. One could ask whether this is a suitable solution. Is this form of constructed standstill appropriate for Linus' work of art? Could it be as evocative to let it disintegrate? In 100 years' time, it will be gone. It is a powerful poetic image. In the depths below the corridor of power, the Garden of Eden is undergoing a slow, infinite process of pulverization. So, maybe show one more installation view. Here, which gives you a view, towards the next room. On your left-hand side, you would have 4 studies of Oslo and New York, and there you look towards, on the left-hand side, Time Passes, as well as an installation that we developed together with other text works, and on the right-hand side, you see exactly a printout of the text that I've been reading to you just now. This was more or less just to give you kind of a sketchy documentary example of this forth and back between moving images and text, about reading and listening, about moving through the space and being moved through spaces within the films. Maybe before we end, what I would also like to address is the exhibition itself as a research process, since we are here in the context of artistic research, of the Artistic Research Week. And since, as Anne has already mentioned, this is an exhibition for which Anne has not produced new work as such. So, however, I think we have talked a lot about, and Anne already mentioned somehow, like how do you situate your own work, for example, within an exhibition venue such as Tromsø Kunstforening? How do you start a dialogue with the place, with the time, with the given frame? But in addition, for example, it was also for me personally, as someone who is not from Norway, very interesting to understand, or to start to understand, some kind of institutional landscape, Norwegian institutional landscape, through the exhibition, and in particular through the text work and text production, because some of the texts have been, for example, published in the UKS Forum, the magazine, that you could maybe speak briefly about, because you're more familiar with this format.
You mean
as well,
exactly this magazine? Or?
Maybe this magazine, but also in general, that I thought like what was very interesting is how, by introducing the text, actually many other places were folding into the exhibition venue, into the place Kunstforening. So certainly there were yeah, as I said, an institutional landscape within the exhibition.
I mean, UKS Forum for Samtidskunst was a magazine that Unge Kunstneres Samfunn published, and which has actually been very important at times for the young arts in Norway. I was never active in that magazine myself, so I don't really know so much about it. But I think those type of venues, or those types of smaller artist-run publications, are very important for artists who write, or for artists who would like to somehow expand their own discursive activity. And I think that was maybe what we discovered, that even if these initiatives seems very local or very small, they're very important. And we saw the same thing in Tromsø as well, that Kurant, for example, this gallery, which has been very active there, had now, for the time being, moved into the Kunstforening and started to do their work there in one of the galleries. And it is an immensely important gallery for the Tromsø scene, I think almost more important than the Kunstforening, actually. So I think we should keep in mind that even these very small interventions, these very short texts that some very obscure artist is able to publish somewhere, they somehow have an impact. I think that's important to remember. Hvor lenge har vi snakket nå? How long have we been speaking?
20 minutes left, so yeah, plenty of time.
Okay, cool.
Including
the Q&A. So we have 10 more minutes and then the Q&A. Good. So maybe we could speak about the table. Does that make sense? You want to say something about the selection of texts?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the most important or most interesting thing about this project has been to work with the book, which we don't have here yet, but which is coming in March, and to work with someone else who can decide things. Actually, I think. I mean, I'm a control freak in many ways, but actually I think to have someone who can say, okay, I would like to use this one, not this one should go after this one is not good, you know, all these things. That's what the curator should somehow do, I think, to be really, or at least I like to work with curators or people who have a very clear opinion, which I think Rike has had in a very constructive way, and that they can actually decide quite a bit about how to show things and how to publish things. Because I think as an artist, very often you don't really know. And I feel, especially with these texts, incredibly lost in the landscape of texts. I don't know if they are okay. I think they're all very embarrassing. And I cannot really divide or find, I cannot really navigate between what's embarrassing but good and what's embarrassing but bad, you know, because you're an artist and everything is somehow shameful. So I think to have this professional person who can somehow take the responsibility, I think that's maybe has for me been very constructive and very comforting somehow. And maybe that's also why I think it's interesting to discuss artistic research and whether artists are able to see their own projects clearly, you know, how, because you're so immersed in what you're doing and you are at the same time very busy with it, but also completely lost within it. And to actually have this instance outside of yourself, I think maybe that's something I would like to talk about, because I think we exaggerate the artist's ability to explain the work, to mediate the work, to theorize the work. And I myself feel actually never capable of doing that. I don't know, Rike, did this make sense?
Of course. I think for me, and the way how I can respond to this is twofolded. On the one hand, what I truly enjoyed about this collaboration is actually kind to as Jørn mentioned in his introduction, that it is, you know, you work, of course, in a dialogue, and I'm surprised again and again when I hear about that, or when I get the feeling that people still think that there is some kind of hierarchy going on between artists and creators. There are always, I mean, we are currently discussing or problematizing power relationships, and within all kind of working situations there are power relationships, but that's kind of on the, you know, that's a different story. When I write a text, I always have the pleasure, or I enjoy the pleasure, to have a good editor. And sometimes I compare my curatorial work also with this, on the one hand, coming in maybe almost as an editor, but then also being edited by artists, as well as all the other protagonists involved in this process, from transport to and financial restrictions to the spaces. So the spaces are as much, and the time is as much an editor as the works. The second thing is that these type of exhibitions, and this is why I'm emphasizing, it's kind of a difficult term, research, but it is, you know, I think it is when you see that an artistic practice, you know, how it starts talking, that it starts talking in the way, in the moment you combine it also with other works. And it was for me a very interesting experiment, actually, to bring these films together with the text works and to do this movement forth and back between editing the publication and at the same time working on the exhibition space. It was still kind of a beginning of this of what we started to explore, because we did it for the first time. But I kind of and maybe hopefully we're going to do it again. But I think what it does, in particular also because kind of how much text do you bring into an exhibition is also a very important question. And what kind of text do you bring into an exhibition? We are all confronted with wall text. We are all confronted in the so-called research exhibitions with a lot of material and with a lot of text. So it was also kind of an experiment to bring in these texts almost like almost as in a way that they have a different function. They set a certain tonality. Also, in particular, in combination with the video works, because we have seen many video installations. Lately, we are confronted with moving images on a daily basis, every second almost in our life. So entering an exhibition, how do you set a particular tonality in this exhibition space? On the one hand, of course, through the selection of works and the combination between the works, but also kind of this, giving people the possibility to read these particular texts with their particular tonality, kind of emphasized or amplified, in my understanding, also a particular logic and property of artistic practices. Also because that the film, the excerpt that we looked at, Untitled City at Night, is in itself, maybe you can call it a semi-documentary, but it's also very poetic. 4 Studies for Oslo and New York is much more what you could call research-based, with dialogues and interviews and so on. So it is this force and back between an imaginary and the documentary space that actually does something here. But I start to monologuize here, and maybe this is kind of reintroducing the misunderstanding of the role of the curator and the role of the artist. Forgive me for this one now. Anne, jump in.
No, I have not.
Come back.
Yeah, no, maybe we can see if there are any questions.
Yeah, the exhibition is up until March, so if you happen to be close to Tromsø, don't miss it. Yes, there's a question.
I'm very interested in shame and embarrassment. We've been talking a lot about opening to the unknown, to not have a goal. Can you try to take us into how that is important in your creative process?
How what is important?
Shame and embarrassment.
Shame and embarrassment. Yeah, but I think also that these feelings, they are there always for the artist. I think otherwise there would be no risk, and without the risk, I think there couldn't really be interesting art. I don't know, but I think so. And I still try to find what's the difference between this positive kind of embarrassment, this kind of feeling that, I always walk out of an exhibition which I have installed and I feel completely, almost scared to death. And it's not getting better, so you student can just...
It's very encouraging.
But I still don't know really if this feeling is productive, if it's a sign of me doing something risky but interesting, or whether it could as well be a sign of me doing something risky and silly and not so interesting, or because maybe it has also to do with my work, because it's very, as Rike pointed out, pedagogical in the sense that it's very, I try to be accessible and I try to make things simple and I try to write in a way that most people can understand it, and I try to be not try to open up somehow to more people, because I think it's a problem with the art scene that it's too exclusive and it's too closed and it's too inaccessible. So that has been something which I have thought a lot about and which I really have worked with. And then it seems, and this is actually difficult, you know, to make something which is accessible and not simplified or banal or flat or yeah, thanks. And I still struggle with this problem, and I don't know. And I think a lot of people maybe think my works are really banal, so and I have to live with that. But there are also a lot of people who are not in the art scene who actually like the work. So I think maybe also at some point you have to choose then whether you would like to be understood, but also be considered simple. You know, this is a choice that we all have to make, I think.
Never underestimate your audience.
No.
For me personally, it's also it's a notion of doubt that you carry with you.
But I think what I wanted to say in terms or in connection with this the whole idea of artistic research and this whole discourse around artistic research is that somehow this shame and embarrassment is really not taken into account, I think. And the lostness of the artist, or also the right to be lost, you know, and the right to stay lost, also not to explain or round up anything in the end with your text, your final text or anything, but actually to stay in this place where you don't know and where you don't want to explain. Yeah.
I just wonder if the lostness is taken care of by the curator, or is it gone in the end? Because I like the lostness and the shamefulness. This is feelings that we can relate to. And I'm a little bit afraid sometimes that this will be taken away in the end. It's taken out somehow in the exhibition.
In which way, and
I don't know.
Why should that happen?
Because you are not shameful as a curator.
Why am I not?
Because this shamefulness is something personal within a process.
And I'm not a human.
No, but I don't mean, I just mean within the work itself, inside of the work, the process.
Where does the work start and where does it end in an exhibition?
I don't know. I just a question if how does the curator work with these feelings of the artwork, the process? I don't know if there's any answer to it.
No, I think it's a super interesting question.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, it's never been. I see your question, but it's never been a question to me, because this is what I think. I guess I understand this dialogue, and I can very much relate. I wouldn't compare my working process with an artistic practice, but these are roles, and there are many curators who also have an artistic practice, or the other way around. Not me personally, but there are. So for me, also in my practice, whether I write or whether I make exhibitions or whether I sit here and have a conversation, doubt, frustration that that you're confronted with moments of non-transmittability, depression. It's present, of course. Yes.
It was more a question to the artist, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
But
I don't know. I'm not sure.
But you asked me, how do I pick up?
Yeah.
How do I pick up on? No.
Yeah. Maybe it's both. Maybe the artist also can answer.
Oh, I thought you addressed the question to me. I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
It was an open question, actually. It was an open question, just
okay.
For the process.
Yeah, but I can also try to to talk about it, because I think that this lostness is there within the work, but it shouldn't maybe really be stated in the exhibition. Or at least you have to, at the same time, do something really powerful. You know, you have to show the audience that you trust the work in some way, and that's what the curator can do, I think, to actually say, okay, but even if you are so embarrassed by this film that you would like to, you know, just walk out of this, we put this film up now in this enormous size. And you have to deal with that, you know, and I have to deal with that then. And I think that's the work of the curator, somehow to say, okay, but I cannot really listen to your shame all the time. we actually had this situation. So I think that maybe this lostness is interesting and necessary in the process, and it's interesting to stay with it, but it shouldn't really show all the time, because then I don't think it looks powerful, and it should. So it's also, I think, to be an artist is also to fake a security, or to fake, you know, like confidence that you don't really have, you know.
I would say that there, you know, it's a wide range of things. So I agree with Anna. There's this, of course, you know, you also have to take responsibility. You know, you walking into the public. There's a lot of thinking behind this exhibition. We just touched on, you know, some moments. At the same time, it doesn't mean that this is writing out everything else. So it's about this kind of, you know, it's like a sound mixer, kind of the way how you know, how much you want to let in from this and push out from that. Yeah. But I think it is also important the way how you organize the space. You know, how much kind of guidance do you give to the visitors, so that they navigate or not navigate the space. So there are many components here.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, there are two questions. I don't know who was first.
Hanne.
How we should decide.
Thank you. I was interested in the idea of bringing the text in the exhibition, like in relation to what you're saying about accessibility, and like the presentation of it, and how do you think of bringing text in that way in the exhibition, and how does it work?
Let's take the other question as well before you answer.
Good, of course.
It's not so much a question, just a thought, because I think lots of artists have this, or a lot of us have this expectation, or somehow we get these expectations that we think others have towards us. Like you say, Anna, that you know, somehow you should explain your work, you should look at it from outside and understand it and so on. And I think, you know, when I see an exhibition, the one thing I don't need is the artist to explain it, because I want to experience it myself. So I think that's like, you know, when artists communicate about what they're doing, it's much more interesting to get lost with you, rather than you kind of like mapping up the space and kind of like, no, solving everything for me. Then there's no work to do for me, and I want to work when I see an exhibition.
Okay, the text question, Rike.
The text question. This is an exhibition that doesn't have any explanatory wall text. It doesn't have any labels. We produced a small folder with the credits, the formal aspect, you know, the titles, the length, the years, the person that needs to be credited, as well as a very short description, kind of a factual description, technical, no, not technical, but a factual description of the work. What is it that you're looking at, basically? So, among I think I already spoke a bit about this relationship between the films or the moving image production and text. To make it very short, I can say that the difference maybe for me was to bring in text that is not about something, but has an equal status as a work.
Okay, thank you. I think we have to end there because we have a new dialogue coming on. Thanks a lot for a very profound discussion, and you will be hanging around, so if there are more questions, obviously you can contact you. We're going to make a quick shift to Tore Wang Lid and